What's happening? Back at it again in drive time. So, my daily bottle of water, although this water is not good. I had a whole idea of what I wanted to talk about, but then I saw a different story or article this morning, or rather a video actually. So I want to talk about that instead. So, saw somebody's video that I believe they made it on TikTok, is what I'm assuming, where the teacher got into a whole back and forth with a student, and then because of that was fired. So the story goes, according to the teacher, she addressed a student for, I guess, being gone for a very long time. Sounds like, just based on some of the context clues, that they were like at lunch or something, and she released the student. The student was gone for too long, and she was trying to correct it. So, asked the student, hey, you was gone for 30 minutes, what happened? Where were you at? And as she's talking to this student, another student goes, what'd he say? And then they kind of start giggling and laughing back and forth about it. So now she redirects her attention from the first student to the second, and made a comment, something to the effect of, either one, I'm the teacher, I'm in charge here, etc., etc. So she says this continues, and then the second student gets, I guess, increasingly upset, to the point where he says something about, you have a penis, you're a man, nothing about you is real. So now her attention is refocused to the second student because she does not want to feel disrespected in the way that he just has. So she's saying that, she told him, you picked the right one, you picked the wrong one, but the right one. The way she described it sounded like they're having a back and forth, to where the student gets angry, and in the midst of his yelling about, you got a penis, you a man, you fake, whatever, the principal comes and intervenes, and the kid is still circling around the principal to continue to argue. So from there, she decides that she's gonna go home for the day because she don't have the brain space to deal with all of this. She goes home, and then she gets a call to find out that she's been fired, effective immediately. A lot of ways to approach this. So first off, we're gonna talk about the teachers involved. Teachers got to stop thinking that all of their extracurricular thoughts, opinions, ideologies, and stuff matter once you get into the school. It don't. None of that matters. I have taught in schools, in the school system before, the public school system, many of them. I believe I'm up to 5 cities at this point. Give or take, over time. I've been a strong believer in my faith for quite some time. I've never once had an issue where I needed to try to preach to a student about what I believe in. I've never had a situation where I had to preach or talk to a student about my marital life or my relationships. None of my personal stuff needs to be in the classroom. Teachers really, really need to understand this. I don't care if you Democrat, Republican, gay, straight, trans, non-binary, married, single, polyamorous, polygynous, whatever it is, whatever your subject is that you teach, stay on task. Leave the other stuff out. It's never going to go in your favor if you got to jump off into extracurricular topics outside of what you are being paid to teach. Also, you got to understand that when you deal with kids, they say wild stuff, and you got to be the adult. She mentioned that this kid is like 6'2", so I'm assuming these is high school kids, although I've had some 6'2s that were younger than high school. But we're just going to say, for the sake of, we believe it's high school, middle school at best. They say wild stuff. So what? Child, adult. Adults are the ones that got to be responsible. You can't lower your responsibility level to that of a child just because they made you upset. That's ridiculous. You gotta be held to a higher standard, not a lower one, and you can't drop yours because they upset you with some quips back and forth, especially at that age, because that's just what they do. If you can't handle that, you shouldn't have had a job. In fact, I saw it because another creator, Anton Daniels, was reviewing it, and he even said, like, this person shouldn't have had a job if they can't handle this, and I wholeheartedly agree. I can give a personal example. Excuse me while I have my morning charcuterie. It's my favorite thing in the morning before going to work. I was in class one day, and my son happened to bring me something. He hands it up to me, give him a hug, tell him I love him, goes on his way. Have a student look at me, up at me, and she couldn't have been any more than 8, 9, which my current daughter is 8. And this is going to help me segue into the second half of my point. But she looks up at me and goes, I don't believe you. I say, excuse me, that ain't your son. I go, yes it is. She says, he don't look like you. You didn't make him. No. At this point, in my head, I'm thinking, okay, why in the world is this kid even on this level of thinking right now? Like I told you, she couldn't have been. She was in my class that ranges from the ages of 6 to 9. So at best she was 9. But I'm gonna say I think she was more like around the age of 8. Why are you challenging paternity at 8? Why are you talking about making a baby and them looking like you at 8? That's insane. I didn't jump out the window and start trying to educate her about the way paternity works, nor did I feel the need to correct her and tell her that you can have a child that don't look like you. My son is adopted. I'm not going down that rabbit hole with her. That's not what they paid me to teach. I just move on, dismiss the class because it was the end, and I let it go. Which brings me to my second point. Parents, y'all got to do better with teaching your kids how to speak to adults. None of this should have ever happened in the first place. There's no way a kid in school, grade school, any school, should be talking to a teacher like this. I don't care if this was a college classroom and the teacher says something disrespectful. You got to teach these kids how to just have decorum. I will never forget when I was in, I want to say 7th grade or something around that time. So 6, 7, 8, one of those. It was in middle school. Teacher said, y'all are uncouth. And I went, what? She says uncouth. I said, what does that mean? She goes, get a dictionary and look it up. So happy she said that. Because she could have just told me, but she was a teacher. So she taught. She taught me to look up a word I don't understand. I looked it up, and it basically meant you don't have manners, unkept or undignified. It was just basically another way, a fancy way of saying you don't know how to behave in public. You have no etiquette. Etiquette was another word that a teacher had to put me up on. So when I heard this story, I'm like, there's no way. Ain't no way in the world my son would have been in school talking like that to a teacher. Any adult for that matter. There's no way in the world. My son's 18. There's no way in the world. And he was homeschooled. But he did half of his first year in high school, like in regular high school. I did all 4 years in regular high. I never would have spoke to a teacher this way. There's no way. There's no way any child should speak to an adult like this. And furthermore, adults shouldn't speak to adults like this. People shouldn't speak to people like this. And it amazes me how many people have no concept of respect for other people, especially authority figures. I have lost track of how many times I've had to correct adults about how they treat other teachers or how they talk about other teachers. I've been in conversations with adults where they'll be talking about a teacher and I'm like, hey, could you not do that? Like, in dance, it's oftentimes a teacher is going to be younger than the parents of their child. I have finally gotten to an age where I am now older than my students' parents at 43. But there's not always, but a lot of the times, for the most part, I'm older than my students' parents now. But that's only in some of the dances I teach. It's not the case in ballroom dance. I'm often younger than my students when I teach that. And I've dealt with it and I've seen it so many times where people think they're the authority purely out of age. And that is simply not the case. I don't care how much older you are than this person. If this person has a knowledge and skill set above you or above yours, you should respect that. And you should respect them. I had a conversation one time where I was dealing with a complaint. Somebody was complaining about a teacher, and they kept pointing out, oh, she's young. Oh, she's young. She's young, so she's young. This and that, she's young. And I just finally, after the third or fourth time I heard her say it, I said, can you do me a favor? She said, what? I said, could you please stop referencing her age? And she goes, well, it's true, she is young. I said, I understand that, but that has no bearing on her in her professional capacity. And I softly reminded this woman, I said, you're right, she is young, but she still knows far more than you do in this discipline. So there's no reason for you to bring her age into this conversation. And I went on to add, I'm older than her as well. And not to mention, I am more experienced than she is. I'm more experienced as a dancer than she is. I'm more experienced as a teacher than she is. However, in what she teaches, she's more experienced than me. So then there's no reason for me to disrespect her and her knowledge purely because I am her senior. Because though I may be her senior overall, I'm not her senior in all things. And in her disciplines, she outranks me in her knowledge. And so I respect her. And I make sure that my child respects her. But nowadays, the parents have no respect, show and demonstrate no respect, so the kids have no respect. And then you get situations like this. Now, I'm going to be honest, what I think, or what I feel like the biggest mistake this teacher made was she brought her job into it. And what I mean by bring her job into it is, no, I'm not talking about her making the complaint or making the video or whatever. She did the video inside the school. And that is where I think she made the fundamental career-ending mistake. Because I think the world we live in now, you know, you're going to be hard-pressed to tell people they can't express their feelings, point of views, etc. And you're going to be hard-pressed to get them to not do it on social media because people are addicted to it. However, they can absolutely ask you to keep their business out of it. You cannot go to work and treat your job as your personal theater to sound off on all the issues that you have about your job. And if these people owned anything, they would understand this. But this is what happens when you have an entitled generation of workers who never been in charge of anything, never owned anything, barely ever managed anything, never created anything. So they have no concept of, this is a privilege that I have to have this job and get paid for it. Therefore, I should treat said privilege with respect and not attach my job to my personal opinions and experiences. She could have did this video from her car. You can clearly see she's in the school still. You can hear the school sounds. You can see boards and stuff on the wall that clearly look like a classroom. And at one point, she even had to pause the video because somebody came into the room she was in. So it's like, you aren't even professional enough to keep the job you got. You arguing back and forth with a kid. You bringing all your sexuality, sexual preference, or whatever to the forefront, which I'm sure that's not what you teach. And even if it was, there's books to demonstrate all those things. You don't need to bring that conversation. Like I said, you arguing back and forth with a kid, and then you airing it out on social media before you even leave the building? Of course they fired you. This generation has got to understand that they are not owed employment. They're not owed a paycheck. You got to earn those things. And if you're not under some solid contract, it can be taken away from you. It just can. Like, I've seen people do this where they get a job and they get on a contract to where they think they're untouchable until their contract is up, and then they find out just how easy them contracts can be worked around. I've seen it done many times. I had a teacher who went rogue in college, and she thought because she was tenured, nobody could do anything about it, and she was proven quite wrong. Because what happens is, can they fire you all the time? Maybe not. Can they minimize your presence? Absolutely. Because a lot of times, them contracts don't say you will be in the classroom until. It just says you will be employed until, and you will get fast-tracked. In a situation like this one, you can get fast-tracked from being a teacher to a tutor to a pencil pusher in a very, very short amount of time. Especially with the day and age we work in now. So, I think it's unfortunate this person lost their job, but at the same time, I really don't, because it didn't seem like she demonstrated the qualities to be in the job in the first place. I don't know what their education level is. She might be summa cum laude, genius level. But to work with kids, you gotta have people skills, and she just simply lacked it. She lacked that, and she lacked self-awareness to be able to handle the situation in a way that let her keep the dignity and the position of an adult. So that's it on that. Like I said, if you want to work with students and stuff, you better have a thick skin, because they are brutal, and they parents ain't raising them right. And if you got kids, do better at raising them. Like, you gotta teach them respect. You gotta teach them respect for your elders. You gotta teach them respect for authority, because it's a bad look on you when they go out wilding out like this. It just makes it look like you failed. So that's it on that one. Until next time.